I tried getting banned from every store. Starting at Cracker Barrel, apparently they have a rule where you can't eat on the chairs outside. Now, I didn't believe this, but after taking some food to go, I definitely got a good amount of stares from employees, but otherwise I was okay. At Buc-ee's, apparently they have a no truck policy and only allow passenger vehicles in their gas stations since it's not a truck stop. I got a 26-foot U-Haul and drove it there, and I actually noticed a good amount of signs up that said no trucks, so I did feel out of place, but luckily nobody said anything, and I was able to exist there. Waffle House apparently has a no back-to-back song policy in place when multiple people are in the restaurant, and so I put $100 into the jukebox and controlled the music for the entire time, but people were dancing and actually having a good time. At Bass Pro Shop, I heard that you can't stay in a tent for more than 10 minutes, but after doing so, nobody seemed to care. And at REI, you apparently can't go in the tents at all, which I didn't believe, but that one was definitely true because we were immediately told no upon trying. And then finally, In-N-Out apparently doesn't allow delivery, so I got a DoorDash driver to go inside and pick up my food, and they seemed to pick up on what was happening by asking my driver some questions, but ultimately I was free to get my food delivered outside with no problem. So now you know. I stayed on the 13th floor of a haunted hotel. Don't do this. So according to urban legend, the 13th floor is known to be haunted because of the superstition around the number 13, which is widely considered unlucky, and so because of that, many hotels remove their 13th floor entirely. Now, upon checking into the haunted hotel, it predictably didn't have a 13th floor, and so I instead requested a room on the 12th floor. And when I got off the elevator onto the floor, I was met with an old-timey hallway and a man seemingly standing outside of our hotel room. This was a bit strange, so I went straight into the room. Here I looked around with the black light and seemingly found fingerprints everywhere in the bathroom, including the toilet, and strange noises coming from the room across the hall, which after looking through the keyhole had 2 security guards forcing their way into the room. Wanting to leave that environment immediately, I decided to go into the stairwell to investigate if there was a 13th floor that was hidden, but it skipped directly to the 14th floor. And this floor was even eerier because we found a random corridor that had a separate service elevator in it that was available to the public, and it was here you were able to access the basement, which upon entering was one of the creepiest things that I've ever seen. Luckily though, I finally made my way back and I decided to check out then and there, and I can absolutely confirm that the 13th floor is haunted. These are skills that are quietly disappearing, so you probably can't do any of these. So only 20% of Gen Z can write in cursive, as it's been eliminated by most curriculums around the world. This contrasts to 95% of baby boomers that could do it. Reading an analog clock is a lost skill, with 75% of Gen Zers reporting difficulty telling time if it's not digital, and reading physical maps has seen a steep drop off as well, with just 10% of Gen Zers being able to navigate using one. The ability to memorize phone numbers dropped noticeably in the younger generations, with just 10% of young people knowing more than 5 phone numbers by heart thanks to their phones saving information now, as is the ability to do mental arithmetic with double digits or greater, which is now also reserved for just 10% of the generation. Only 5% of Gen Z can drive manual, as cars opt for automatic transmissions now, and only 3% of Gen Z know how to sew a button or patch a hole on a shirt. Less than 2% of Gen Z know how to properly tone a radio or use a rotary phone, and even less know how to read a sundial, which for a long time told people how to tell time. And finally, less than 0.5% of Gen Zers have any idea how to read Morse code, so if you ever get captured and need to communicate, it's not looking too good. How many free refills can you actually get at a restaurant? So I went to Buffalo Wild Wings with the goal of ordering as many drinks as possible in a single sitting to see how many they'd give me before I get cut off or reach capacity. My drink of choice was my favorite drink, unsweetened iced tea, because it has 0 calories, but I forgot that it does have caffeine. More on that later. And so I began drinking up my first, second, and third iced tea with absolutely no issue. At the 4th iced tea, I did notice there was visibly more ice in my cup, which I'm guessing was to curb my consumption a bit. But ironically, that actually helped me out because now it was easier to get more refills, and so I continued on drinking numbers 5, 6, and 7 before the food ultimately came. Now obviously this much liquid came with many bathroom breaks, but I was pacing decently and eventually got into the double digits. At refill number 12, I was starting to reach capacity, not only in terms of the total liquid in my body, but also caffeine, having 600 milligrams at this point, so I only had a few more left. I read somewhere that 14 refills by a single person in one sitting was the record, and so I'm happy to state that after 1.5 hours at Buffalo Wild Wings, I achieved 15 refills, setting the apparent record and proving that free refills are actually endless. Very cool. Who is the most attractive celebrity? So according to a study conducted by Dr. Julian De Silva, the objectively best-looking male celebrity was Aaron Taylor Johnson, whose total face has a 93.04% alignment with the golden ratio, which is nearly perfect. He's closely followed by Lucian Laviscount, Paul Mescal, Robert Pattinson, and Jack Loudon. For the best-looking female celebrity, Jodie Comer was the most attractive with a 94.52% alignment with the golden ratio, followed by Zendaya, Bella Hadid, Beyonce, and Ariana Grande. And so while according to this study, Jodie Comer seems to mog everybody, historically there have been celebrities who theoretically ranked even higher, and this would include Gregory Peck, Paul Newman, and Cary Grant for men, and Marilyn Monroe, Audrey Hepburn, and Grace Kelly for women. If we're looking at the winners of the Most Beautiful Person in the World awards, though, the record belongs to Julia Roberts, who has won it 5 times across 3 different decades with nobody coming close. But actually, according to a brand new study, scientists have assessed the faces of everyone in the public space, and they have concluded that Anya Taylor-Joy currently has the most attractive face of any public figure, having a golden ratio alignment of 94.66%, which is the highest in history. What movie has the most remakes of all time? So in terms of major Hollywood studio remakes, both A Star is Born and King Kong have each been made 4 times over the past 100 years, expanding into international markets though, and Godzilla reigns supreme with 23. Though technically an Italian movie called Perfect Strangers is the Guinness Guinness World Record holder with 24 remakes, but if we expand the definition of a remake to include direct retellings, then Frankenstein has seen 40 different film versions following the original 1931 film, and Dracula has seen 45 remakes following their original 1931 film. Shakespeare's works have been told even more than this though, with both Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet both being remade over 50 times when including modern reworks like West Side Story and Ophelia respectively. If we're looking more generally though at the most remade portrayed story, then that might go to Sherlock Holmes and adjacent works, since him as a character has over 250 credits across film and television. But sticking with just one singular linear story, the story with the most remakes in film history belongs to A Christmas Carol, which is thought to have more than 135 unique versions across film and television, ranging from silent films all the way to the Muppets version. These are the most expensive website names ever sold. So NFTs.com sold for $15 million in 2022, which was the largest domain name sale over the past 5 years, but right before that in 2019, Voice.com was sold to a crypto company for $30 million in cash, making it the largest all-cash sale for a website in history. In 2010, the company Quinn Street, a digital marketing company, purchased both Insurance.com and CarInsurance.com for $35.6 million and $49.7 million respectively, marking a high there. Though technically before this in 2005, LasVegas.com was bought by the owners of Vegas.com for $90 million to be paid in installments over 35 years. Though all of this is dwarfed in comparison to Business.com, which was sold for $345 million in 2007 to R.H. Donnelley, a Yellow Pages publisher looking to break into the digital media space. But even Business.com isn't even close to the value paid for Cars.com, which according to some sources sold for $872 million in 2014 to a company called Gannett, as this was a part of a wider $2.5 billion acquisition. I wonder if it was worth it. Here are celebrities that are related to historical figures. So Hilary Duff is famously an 18th generation descendant of the 14th century King Edward III, meaning she's the closest American celebrity to British royal lineage. Anderson Cooper is the great-great-great-grandson to Cornelius Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilts being one of America's richest dynasties, but was notably left with no inheritance because the family lost all their money in the 1970s. Ben Affleck is the 11th cousin to Obama, and Brad Pitt is actually 9th cousins with Obama. Brad Pitt is also a 25th cousin of King Henry II of England, as is Beyonce through her Creole roots. George Clooney is a half first cousin, 5 times removed of Abraham Lincoln, while Tom Hanks is the 3rd cousin, 4 generations removed of the 16th president. Robert Pattinson is distantly related to Vlad the Impaler, the basis for Dracula, which is ironic because he played a vampire in Twilight, and Benedict Cumberbatch is the 16th cousin of King Richard III, and he actually played him on a TV show called The Hollow Crown. And finally, Bill Hader and Sir Christopher Lee are both direct descendants of the Roman Emperor Charlemagne, making him the most represented historical figure in all of media and celebrity. Pretty cool, right? These are famous people who disappeared. So Jean Spangler was a 1940s Hollywood actress who disappeared in 1949 with her purse found in Griffith Park in LA with a note to a man named Kirk, but nobody ever found her whereabouts, while Connie Converse, one of the first modern songwriters, left New York City one day in 1974, and after saying bye to her friends and family, was never heard of ever again. Harold Holt, the Prime Minister of Australia, disappeared in 1967 while swimming. Nobody ever recovered his body, but assumed he drowned. Similarly, Michael Rockefeller vanished in 1961 in Papua New Guinea while on an expedition, and it was initially presumed that he drowned, but nobody actually knows if he drowned, was attacked, or captured by the indigenous people there. Jimmy Hoffa was a labor union leader who randomly vanished one day outside of a restaurant in Michigan, with nobody ever knowing why, despite speculation that it was mafia-related. Richie Edwards, the lead guitarist for the band Manic Street Preachers, vanished without a trace in 2008. They ended up finding his car near a bridge, but never found his body. And finally, Amelia Earhart vanished in 1937 during her trip around the globe, in which she disappeared somewhere over the Pacific, and nobody has any idea where or how. That's crazy. Which actor has been in the most movies? So John Wayne holds the record for the Hollywood actor with the most leading roles with 153 movies, with Bette Davis being slightly behind him with 125. This falls significantly short, though, of Malaysian actor named Prem Nazir, who was a leading actor in 725 films, notably with 39 films with him as a lead role in 1979 alone. If we're accounting for minor credited roles, though, Eric Roberts is actually the most prolific actor in Hollywood with over 880 film credits, with 74 movies in 2017 alone. Right behind him with 730 films is James Hong. Frank Welker, the voice of Fred from Scooby-Doo, actually appears in 875 different films as a voice actor for different characters, which technically places him even higher than Eric. But even this falls short of the actor with the most total movies, which actually belongs to a Tollywood actor named Kanan Ganti Brahmanandam, who has appeared in over 1,100 movies, recognized by Guinness as the most prolific actor ever. Unless you're accounting for extras, though, in which case Tom London, an old westerns actor, appeared in 2,000 films as minor characters throughout the early 1900s, putting him on top. So now you know. Let's try to guess the ethnicity of these famous people. I used to think she was Asian, but then I found out she was white and it blew my mind. But since she's fairer skinned, probably something more north, like German or French maybe. English, Irish, and French. Wow, okay. Is Shakira just not 100% Colombian? She's like the poster girl for Colombia, right? Colombian and Lebanese. Really? Okay. Olivia Rodrigo is definitely Filipino and probably like European as well. Maybe Filipino and German. No, that's a common mix. Nice. Wow, okay. There we go. See, she feels the same ethnicity as Miranda Cosgrove, but I know she's not Asian. I consider her being like English and like Polish maybe. Ashkenazi Jewish. All right. I guess that makes sense. Probably a bit of Polish then. Vin Diesel. I never knew with him. I think he's like half white, half black, maybe like Italian and African American. English and African American. Okay. Not too far off. And then I know some people think she's Latina, but I'm like 90% sure she's Filipino and something else. Maybe Italian. Filipino and English. All right. Not bad. What is the cheapest item you can get delivered to you? So Uber Eats states that you have to buy at least one item to be eligible for delivery, but how small and cheap can that item be? Well, I started by looking at different fast food restaurants and scouring for their cheapest items, but this wasn't satisfying, and so I went to a grocery store listing and found a single banana for 21 cents, but I still figured it was a bit too big. And so I went back to fast food, and at McDonald's I found a way to add single condiments, where you can technically add a $0 honey packet to your cart and proceed to checkout. And so I did that, and I was charged $3.49 after all the fees, and I began to wait for my order to process. And it did, and I got assigned a driver immediately and a delivery window and started to wait for my single honey packet to be delivered. Unfortunately, however, the first driver canceled, likely because it was too small of an order, which was fine though because it was reassigned to a new driver, but he also canceled. But then it was reassigned again, but for the third time the person canceled. And I tried this over and over again, and none of the drivers on Uber Eats would accept the order, to the point where Uber Eats actually refunded me because there was nobody who would take the honey packet to me. Which means that you technically can order a single condiment, but good luck finding an Uber driver that will deliver it to you. I tried every themed fast food meal, starting with Dunkin', and they had a Glinda Pink refresher drink with blueberry pumps and an Elphaba ice cream matcha, and these were a really cute pairing. And while I did individually enjoy the taste of both of them, they definitely didn't pair well together, unlike the movie. Popeyes was next, as they were serving a Five Nights at Freddy's 2 meal, which intrigued me as it was garlic parm chicken tenders, mozzarella tots, orange Fanta, and a pink mystery cake. And these were actually some of the best fast food items I've ever had, period, with those cheesy tots being perfectly crispy and cheesy, and the tenders having a perfect flavor profile. The cake, on the other hand, not so much. Taco Bell partnered with Frank's Red Hot Sauce to create Diablo chicken nacho fries, which is exactly as it sounds, and it tasted great with a good balance of spicy and salty, and it really had me excited to finish it. Starbucks had all their Christmas themed food and drinks, like this polar bear cake pop, which was fun and tasty, a peppermint mocha hot latte, which was festive, and a caramel brulee latte, which I got because I like the name. And then I ended things at McDonald's, which had a collaboration with Chips Ahoy to make a frappe with cookie crumbs on top of the whipped cream, and as a big Chips Ahoy fan, I liked it, but I wish there was more cookie. Very cool though. This is what the middle class looked like over the last 100 years, and this is inflation adjusted. So in the 1920s, the average home price was $80,000, with medium household incomes equal to that. The federal tax rate was actually just over 3% as well, and the middle class was thriving. Into the 30s was the Great Depression, with wages and home prices falling significantly, before a rebound in the late 40s post-war with a return to the 1920s levels. The 1950s was the golden age for the middle class, with major income growth and low inequality. Stable housing and suburbia emerged here, and stable manufacturing jobs were present. In the 1960s, home prices continued increasing, as were wages, and in the 70s we saw income stall, but home values increased to nearly $200,000, making buying a house for the first time quite difficult. This trend then continued into the 80s and 90s as the upper middle and lower middle class started to take shape, as home prices were around $250,000 now, despite wages staying around $75,000. In the 2000s, there was a housing bubble, of course, and a crash along with income stagnation that mirrored the 1930s. And now into the 2010s and 2020s, home prices have increased to $400,000 for a starter home, despite income remaining on par with what effectively it was 100 years ago. So now you know. This video will get smaller every second. So right now you could see me because I'm basically full size, probably 95% of what I started at, but that's because every second I'm going to be reducing about 2 to 3% in size. Now honestly, a lot of this will depend on which device you're watching on. So if you're on mobile, for instance, you're going to be squinting into your phone probably within the next 10 seconds or so, because I'm going to get so small. So you're going to be like, oh, where'd Sam go? I'm still here. Don't worry. I'm just getting a little bit smaller. And if you're on a large screen like a TV, a 4K TV in the living room, 85 inch, I'll probably be here with you until the very end, even when I'm a little speck. I did try to wear white so the light could refract off me. That was kind of like my favor to you guys, so you're not squinting too hard into your phone. I'm sure it didn't help whatsoever. If you're on like an iPad or a tablet, I'm also probably starting to drop off right now. I'm just like a little speck on your screen, so I'm sorry about that. And if you're on the TV, which apparently 35% of you guys who watch these videos are, which is insane, but you could probably still see me because you're on a mega screen. And if you could still see me, well, I think you're lying because I'm probably too small at this point, so I'm going to do something incredibly obscene that'll probably get me kicked off of every platform, but since it's no longer actually on screen, it doesn't matter, right? Goodbye. What percent of videos are AI generated? So to test this, I started by opening up a brand new YouTube Shorts tab on incognito mode, clearing the cookies, and began scrolling. Now, as expected, I immediately got hit with a few AI videos, like a video of these people entering this woman's eyes and then walking around in there, and then a video of a firefighter's POV rescuing a rabbit. And this doesn't account for the endless AI voiceover videos of automated Reddit stories with parkour in the background. In total, after 100 videos, 16 videos were either AI generated or AI adjacent. From here, I checked TikTok, and this was immediately worse, as I was getting videos of AI sheep getting sheared, captured, little babies playing video games, rides malfunctioning, lumberjacks and cows pushing trees down, and much more. And those were all within the first 20 scrolls. In total, it ended up being 29 out of 100 videos that were AI generated, almost double of YouTube. And then I ended things on Instagram Reels, where I created a brand new account and began my scroll, and here predictably was the worst, because after scrolling through 100 videos, I got 31 videos that were AI generated, which means in total, roughly 25% of the videos you consume on these platforms are likely AI generated. That's crazy. These are company rebrands that completely backfired. So Cracker Barrel spent $700 million modernizing its brand by replacing their logo, remodeling stores away from the vintage decor, and switching to reheating food for efficiency. And as a result, they lost over $100 million in market value immediately, and after just 4 days, they reverted back to their old ways. Jaguar completely reset internally and started promoting itself carless with neon coloring and electric-only cars that were double the price of their traditional cars. They replaced their logo as well, and since they currently have no cars in their inventory, sales dropped by 98% in 2025. X lost over 70% of its valuation figure, and dozens of major advertisers following its rebrand away from Twitter. Usage nowadays, though, is actually up, and apparently regained all of that and is back to pre-X days. Gap spent $100 million to randomly change their logo without explanation and received massive backlash, so much so that they reverted back to the original just 6 days later. And finally, Tropicana redesigned their logo to remove the orange with a straw in it in favor of a generic juice glass design, and it lost $300 million in 1 month and had to revert back to their original concept just a few days after. These are the last people alive today. So out of the 12 men who walked on the moon, only 4 remain, being Buzz Aldrin, David Scott, Charles Duke, and Harrison Schmitt. Ethel Carterham's the last person alive, born in the first decade of the 1900s, being born in 1909, making her 116 years old. Notably, the top 20 oldest people alive today are all women, and 48 of the top 50 are women. One of the last witnesses to the JFK assassination is Dr. Tony Glover, who still remains alive today after experiencing it in person in 1963. One of the others is an AP reporter named Peggy Simpson, who is also the last living person to witness Jack Ruby kill Lee Harvey Oswald. The last Manhattan Project scientist was Peter Lax, who died recently in 2025, but worked closely on the calculations for the atomic bomb. Ironically, one of the last ever living eyewitnesses of the Hiroshima bomb detonation, named Shigemi Fukuhori, died just months before. There's even debatably somebody alive today named Barbara Kent, who would be 93 years old, and she was the first person to accidentally play with an atomic bomb. And finally, the last living link to Anne Frank was Eva Schloss, her stepsister, but unfortunately she died earlier in 2026. Pretty cool, right? These are the loneliest people in history. So during the Apollo 11 moon landing mission in 1969, Michael Collins stayed behind in the command module orbiting the moon while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. He was 2,500 miles away from Neil and Buzz and 250,000 miles away from everyone else, being the loneliest experience of all time. Juana Maria was part of the Nicoleño tribe, which was removed from an island in 1835 for their protection, but they accidentally left behind Juana, who lived there entirely alone for 18 years until she was found in 1853, but unfortunately she died 7 weeks after from dysentery. And this is similar to a man named Man of the Hole, who lived in total isolation in the Amazon rainforest for 30 years after his tribe was massacred. Albert Woodfox spent nearly 43 years in solitary confinement in a 6-by-9 foot cell after being accused of killing a prison guard. He spent 23 hours a day in the cell and only had 1 hour each day with any sort of interaction with the world. He was actually later released because the conviction was overturned, which is crazy. And finally, Simeon Stylites was a monk who climbed a pillar in the Syrian desert and lived on top of it for 37 years to be closer to God, only allowing people to contact him to bring him periodic food. Pretty cool, right? These are the worst medical mistakes ever. So in 1995, a man went in for surgery to have his diseased leg amputated. However, because of some paperwork mix-up, the surgeon accidentally amputated the healthy leg instead. When he woke up, he was obviously shocked, but he still had to get his other bad leg amputated the next day. Similarly, a woman getting a heart-lung transplant was accidentally killed after the surgeons didn't check beforehand that the blood type was compatible. In 2000, a man named Donald Church had a tumor removed from his abdomen, but afterwards he felt excruciating pain for months, only to realize that the surgeons left a 13-inch long metal retractor in his body that was pressing up against his organs. A man named Sherman Sizemore went in for surgery and received the paralytic, which stopped his body from moving, but not the anesthetic, which makes you unconscious, meaning he experienced an entire 16-minute surgery feeling everything but not being able to do anything about it. During radiation therapy at a hospital 30 years ago, the machine was broken and said that nothing was being administered, leading to doctors overcompensating and massively overdosing with radiation, which ultimately burned several patients from the inside out. And finally, Dr. Death was a neurosurgeon who would purposefully leave malicious Easter eggs on patients, like leaving hardware in their tissue, severing their vocal cords, and misplacing tools. These are actors that almost died on set. So Sylvester Stallone almost died during the filming of Rocky IV as he took a real punch from Dolph Lundgren in this scene, which he had to actually spend 9 days in intensive care over, with the impact being similar to a head-on car crash. Jackie Chan has a permanent hole in his head thanks to a 25-foot fall he had after a tree branch snapped during this scene of Armor of God, where he ultimately cracked his skull on a rock. Tom Cruise was almost decapitated during The Last Samurai after a mechanical horse malfunctioned, and his head was inches away from hitting a sword that was luckily pulled back 1 centimeter away. Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future Part 3 actually choked for real during this scene and passed out for nearly a minute after offering to do the scene realistically. Similarly, Diane Kruger in Inglourious Basterds actually lost consciousness from Christoph Waltz choking her in this scene. Isla Fisher almost drowned on the set of Now You See Me after her chains got stuck during the water in this scene, being underwater for 3 minutes. The crew actually thought she was just doing a great job acting, but actually she was drowning. And finally, Jason Statham accidentally drove a truck 60 feet off a pier into the Black Sea during the Expendables 3 filming, but luckily his training allowed him to break free and swim to the surface to survive. That's crazy. I tested display items at stores. Starting with IKEA, I was wondering if it was possible to prepare food inside of one of their kitchens. So to test this, I brought a bunch of supplies to make a sandwich and got to it, using the kitchen at my disposal and putting together a pretty tasty sandwich. There was no friction whatsoever, and none of the employees or customers seemed to care that I was doing it, and so I decided to eat my sandwich on one of the display kitchen tables, and once again, nobody seemed to care, including the employees. After this, I decided to lounge on the couch for 30 minutes with a bag of chips. Once again, nobody cared, and I was even able to take a full 30-minute nap on one of their display beds with one of the blankets. But how about Home Depot? Because I've always found it weird that you weren't able to try out the display toilets before buying them, and so I decided to scale the shelf and plop myself down on one of the display toilets to get a good test in, and it was really nice. And then afterwards, I decided to test one of the showers as well. I also had to climb for that. But I think one of the strangest things is that you're not allowed to try appliances before buying them, and in fact, there's no electrical outlets really in any store. And so to get around this, I decided to bring my own generator into places like Target and Lowe's so I could test things like a lamp, a mini fridge, a microwave, and I was even able to power an entire washing machine to try it out. I mean, they're there for a reason. These are jobs that have age limits. So commercial airline pilots are required to retire at 65 to ensure passenger safety, as cognitive and physical reflexes are obviously important to keep intact. Similarly, air traffic controllers must retire by even younger at 56 because of intense split-second spatial processing to ensure that peak performance is held in the airspace. Interestingly though, air traffic controllers must be hired before 31 because of the rigorous training and burn-in period that makes it nearly impossible for the FAA to hire older recruits. Federal law enforcement like FBI agents and Secret Service members can't be over the age of 57 to ensure that they're always physically capable. They have a strict hiring window as well, at least for FBI special agents, which must be appointed by the age of 37. In the military, maximum age windows exist, like in the Marine Corps, which usually won't take people over the age of 28, and in the Air Force and Navy, which usually cap out around 40. Cardinal electors for the Pope lose their right to vote at age 80 to ensure that they're mentally capable of picking the right leader, while judges in most developed countries besides the United States have mandatory retirement ages around 70 for similar reasons. And finally, the President of the United States must constitutionally be 35 years old in order to run. These are movies that were made by YouTubers. So Talk to Me is a horror film made by Australian YouTubers Raka Raka that grossed over $92 million on a $4 million budget, making it A24's most successful horror film to date. They actually made a second film last year called Bring Her Back, which also had strong reviews and grossed over $40 million. Shelby Oaks is a horror film made by film critic YouTuber Chris Stuckman in 2025. It was actually crowdfunded and raised $1.4 million from fans that funded the movie, which led to mixed reviews and $7 million made. Markiplier made the horror movie Iron Lung, which is based off the video game of the same name. It's actually made over $60 million and is technically the highest ROI video game movie of all time. 10 Cloverfield Lane, another horror movie, was made by Dan Trachtenberg, who co-hosted the YouTube series Totally Rad Show. He's gone on to direct Predator, Badlands, and even the pilot episode of The Boys. Bo Burnham made the comedy movie 8th Grade, which actually holds a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes and made over $14 million at the box office. And finally, David Sandberg originally posted his short films on YouTube, which, thanks to some early virality, ultimately launched his career, and he went on to make Lights Out, Shazam, and Until Dawn. You love to see it. How much does it cost to buy the entire menu? I mean, Cheesecake Factory has 250 items. Let me do some quick math here. So times 20, 5,000 plus drinks, maybe 6,000, 7,000, 10,000. Wow, that's expensive. It makes sense if you include the alcohol, I guess. Taco Bell actually did this once. It wasn't the entire menu, but I think I spent like 130. So if I got everything, like all variations, maybe like 250. Yep, spot on. Starbucks. Are we counting like all the modifications? Because they only have like 60 total items. With the modifications, it could be infinite. I don't know, maybe like $500. 1,000. Okay, so I guess counting everything. In-N-Out. I haven't gone in a while, but they have like 3 items. This is probably super cheap, maybe like $75. 40. Is that right? That's insanely low. McDonald's should be like Taco Bell. I can see like 300 for them. No, 400. All right, well, pretty close, all things considered. And then Dunkin'. I mean, I'm guessing their market research team basically mirrored Starbucks. They're probably around 1,000 as well, right? 950. All right, not bad. I bought AI-generated ads to see what they actually look like. Starting with this cool AI cat bed I found, I thought that it would rival my gorilla couch and dog couch based on the pictures, but after purchasing it, I can confirm this was an absolute scam because it was literally just a glorified sleeping bag. Afterwards, I found this really cool drink jacket I found on AliExpress. I was positive this was a scam, but it looked promising when it arrived, and after filling it up with iced tea, it not only looked exactly like the picture, but I was able to sip my drink out of the attached straw. Also on AliExpress was an AI-generated go-kart ad that looked way too good for the price they were asking for, but I went ahead and purchased it. One When it arrived, I assembled it, and I was surprised to get an actual working go-kart that I'm able to drive around my room. This AI-generated LED cloud off of TikTok Shop was next, and I was rightfully skeptical in it looking anything like the picture. And when it arrived, it looked like this, and I was chalking it up to be a letdown, but I was able to make it look kind of cool. And then finally, I found this really cool polar bear lounger on this LV furniture website that I was almost positive wasn't going to look anything like the picture, but to my surprise, this one looked exactly like the ad and is now maybe one of my favorite products I've ever purchased. Pretty cool. These are movies that were deleted. So Star Wars A New Hope was apparently so bad that all of George Lucas's friends said it would be a career-ending flop. He almost deleted the entire movie, but instead decided to entirely rework it, and it led to the start of the franchise. A director named Richard Williams spent 28 years hand animating what was going to be one of the greatest animated films ever made, but after he went over budget, the studio decided to fire him, and they tore up the entire film. A 9-hour movie was shot called Greed, and was sold to MGM for distribution, but MGM decided they wanted to release a condensed 2-hour version of the movie, so to ensure the director couldn't have any more say, they boiled the rest of the film, meaning that nearly 80% of the film is completely gone in history. This actually happened to Metropolis as well in the 1920s, but in 2008, a tiny museum in Argentina realized that they had a 16mm print lying around for decades, so they unearthed it and saved the legacy of the film. And finally, Toy Story 2 was literally almost deleted after a Pixar employee ran a cleanup command on a computer, which completely erased the project, but luckily an employee named Galen Suzman was working from home on maternity leave, and she had a backup copy on a USB stick that literally saved the entire movie and franchise. So shout out to Galen. How many should you take? I mean, depends where you're at, but I'd say a rule of thumb is like 2 sauces per item, maybe 3, because like the last thing you want is to run out of sauce and you have to eat dry food. Free samples are probably weird after your second one. Even going for a second is pushing it, but I think 3 is the official stop. Ice cream samples is the same thing. I think you can try like 2 flavors max, then after that you should get cut off. Unlimited breadsticks, like refills? Probably like 4 baskets is max. If you're refilling more than that, that's just like an ungodly amount of bread anyways. Free refills, I think you can go pretty high. Maybe like 5 or 6 is the max, because if you get a refill or 2 per course, that seems pretty standard. If you're touching double digits, though, that becomes a bit too much. Water cups, I don't think you can ask for more than 1 per person in your group. So if I'm going solo, I would never ask for more than 1. Mints? I don't really take mints, but you can probably take like a small handful and it's normal. Toothpicks, though, would be 1. And then napkins? Probably 1 healthy stack is good. Once you get into like 2 stacks, I think they know that you're going for the car inventory. This is food that used to be banned. So in the 1900s, margarine had to be dyed bright pink so consumers wouldn't mistake it for pure butter. It wasn't until 1967 that the dairy industry decided to stop fighting against it. Absinthe was banned in the United States and Europe up until 2007 because it was thought to have caused hallucinations and insanity due to the wormwood that was in it. Blackcurrant was banned in the United States until 2003 because they produced spores that killed white pine trees. This is actually why purple food in the United States is grape flavored, while in the UK and other countries it's blackcurrant. Red dye number 2 was banned in the United States in 1976 because it was found to have caused intestinal tumors in rats. It was for this reason that the US changed to instead adopt red 40 and red 3. It's also the reason that M&Ms temporarily killed off their red M&M for 10 years back in the 70s and 80s. Kinder Surprise eggs have been banned in the United States since 1938 because they violate our no toys and food policy, though Kinder Joy eggs have circumvented the law since they now have the toy and the cream in 2 separate halves. And finally, haggis was banned in the United States in 1971 because we're not allowed to eat livestock lungs, but I don't think anybody's complaining about that. I visited stores that are disappearing. Starting with the Disney store, which has less than 20 stores left after closing 95% of them over the past 5 years. It's crazy to see this store going down because it still feels lively with completely decked out inside and overpriced Mickey Mouse ears. I found one of the last remaining Radio Shacks left and went inside to a predictably empty store that still kind of looked like the original stores. I ended up buying a radio from there because I figured it was fitting. Next up was Bed Bath & Beyond Home, which is a spin-off of the now fully closed Bed Bath & Beyond stores. And this one had a focus on home decor, but still retained the bones of Bed Bath & Beyond, which was cool. I went to Buca de Beppo next, which has closed more than 40% of their stores thanks to competition from fast casual and places like Olive Garden. And I could definitely see why they're closing because while the atmosphere was cool, the food was nothing special. Big Lots announced the closure of all their stores in 2024 thanks to a bankruptcy, but they ended up reopening a couple of them, so I decided to check them out. And they surprisingly had a ton of cheap items like furniture and decor. And I decided to end things at Party City, which decided to close all their stores a couple of years ago and now operates solely in Staples. And I have to say, it was really nice being inside a fully stocked Party store, and I even bought a balloon to commemorate it.
কি হইছে বলতো? আর বলিস না, তোরে যে বুকিং দিছে সে তখন আমার পিছনে লাগছে।
দিশান আমার দরজা লাগা দিতে আমার দরজা লাগা দিতে কই যায় কই যা
আমরা তো বিয়েই দিয়ে দিবে বাসা থেকে।
মাম্মা লাভ স্টোরি তো শুরু করে দিলা ভালো 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 মালটারে কি পড়ানো যায়
তুই একটা কাম কর আজকে থেকে আমি তোমার তুমি আমার ব্যাস ডিসিশন ফাইনাল বুকিং দিয়ে রাখলাম ঠিক আছে কি খবর তোমাদের কেমন আছো তোমরা সবাই ভালো তো না তুমি জানো তোমার কালকে তো কতবার বলছি
হ্যালো, আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম। কি রে হৃদয়, তুই মানা করতেছি।
কিছু না কিছু। ভাবি আপনি জানেন আমি একবার অসুস্থ হয়ে গেছিলাম, ও আমাকে রক্ত দেয়নি, আর আজকে আপনাকে রক্ত দিয়ে চিঠি লিখছে।
কালকে সারা রাত তোমার আমি কল দিচ্ছি।
সারা রাত? তাহলে আপনি শুনুন আপনার ভালোবাসার মানুষের অতীত বর্তমান। পাগল কোন একদম ঠিক হয় না, ওনার ব্যথা লাগে নাই?
ব্যথা তো বেশি তুই।
তুহিনের ব্যথা লাগছে মানে?
বন্ধু তুই চিন্তা করিস না রে, ভাবির মন ঠিকই গলে যাবে।
ভাবির মন তো ঘুরবে কিন্তু
আরে না না না,
সম্ভব না। গাড়ি ঘোড়া তো
হঠাৎ আমার বাসার নিচে কোনো জরুরি দরকার?
তুমি কি আজকে কোচিং এ যাও নাই? সুন্দর মতো যাবি, ভাবির নামটা জিজ্ঞাসি। আর শুন, ভালো মতো কথা কবে, ভাবি লাগে। খালি থাপড় আর চাপাবাজি, এই বাদে আর কিছু পাচ্ছস? বুকিং মানে বুকিং, তুমি আমার আমি তোমার, বুকিং দিয়ে দিছি ফাইনাল।
আমাকে বুকিং দিছে মানে আমাকে কে বুকিং দিছে দোস্ত?
তোর যে আশিক আছে না, এখন তো ও আমার পিছনে লাগছে।
আমার তো অনেক ভয় লাগতেছে দোস্ত। এই যে আস্তে আস্তে সব মানুষ জানবে, তারপর আমার ফ্যামিলিকেও জানাই দিবে। আর আমার
এন্ড বেস্ট অফ লাক ফর ডক্টরশিপ। আমি দোয়া করি তুমি যেন একজন ভালো ডক্টর হও।
আমার কাছে জিনের বাচ্চার নাম্বার আছে। জিনের বাচ্চা
করতে চাস নাকি ইটিস পিটিস করতে চাস? বদতমিজ।
হ্যালো বন্ধু,
আমার রোদে দিছস?
এই তো দিছি তো।
ঠিক মতো রোদে দিছস?
কি শুনতে চান? আমি আপনাকে ভালোবাসি।
ফোন দিয়ে যেতেছি, তুমি ফোনই ধরো না। তোমার ফোন ধরার কোনো নামই নাই, কোনো কথা। তোমার ফোন ধরো না কেন?
এবারে এক্সামের প্রিপারেশন কিরকম তোদের? আমি তো খুবই এক্সাইটেড, কারণ আমার প্রিপারেশন খুবই ভালো।
জিসান দরজা খোল।
সুন্দর মতো যাবি, ভাবির নামটা জিজ্ঞাবি। আর শোন, ভালো মতো কথা কবি, ভাবি লাগে। খালি ফাপড় আর চাপাবাজি, ফাপড় আর চাপাবাজি, এই বাদে আর কিছু পারছোস? বুকিং মানে বুকিং, তুমি আমার আমি তোমার, বুকিং দিয়ে দিছি ফাইনাল।
আমাকে বুকিং দিছে মানে আমাকে কে বুকিং দিছে দোস্ত?
তোর যে আশিক আছে না, এখন তো ও আমার পিছনে লাগছে।
এই এই দুলাভাই সামনে থাকলে যে সালাম দিতে হয়, আপনি শিখাই নাই তোরা? কেমন আছো তুমি?
ভালো।
আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করবো না?
রক্তটা দিবি তুই।
আমি কেন রক্ত দেবো? প্রেম খরচ তুই, রক্ত।
আমার বন্ধু জিসান আপনাকে অনেক ভালোবাসে ভাবি, আপনার ওর রক্ত যাওয়াটা বিধে হতে দিবেন না ভাবি।
I tried anti-scream devices, starting with this belt box, which is used by singers to dampen their voice during warm-ups, and it promises to reduce sound by up to 30 decibels, which is a big claim. After unboxing it and putting it on, it felt like a human muzzle, but did feel pretty solid, and so I first established a baseline with this scream. Ah! And then after that, screamed again with the belt box. And it actually worked really well. It didn't mute me completely, but it certainly let me be as loud as I wanted to be. Afterwards, I went to level 2, which is a Chinese voice dampener called the Troy Studio, and this is interestingly used more so for stress relief and anger management. Now, it looked a bit suspicious, but it did promise to give me 32 decibels of suppression, which is more than the belt box. I gave it a try, and these were the results. So it felt pretty similar, which meant that it was time for level 3, the sweatshirt. Apparently screaming into a cotton sweatshirt gives you nearly 50 decibels of suppression, and so I loaded up my scream, put the sweatshirt against my mouth, and yelled as loud as I could over and over again, but hardly any sound was made. Pretty cool.